Stephen, now that I have survived my first ever rapid fire rundown of topics, let's take a closer look at some of the other stories that we're following. And let's start across the pond, like you mentioned, with Cisco Live happening this week, Cisco Live EMEA. Cisco's looking to embrace the growing field of IoT with some new announcements around rugged switches and access points, as well as new dashboard design to address the needs of operating teams. The new Cisco IoT dashboard allows existing IT teams to manage Cisco IoT offerings such as the IE3100 Rugged Series Switch and the IW9165 Series Access Point. The goal is to provide more integration between these teams to help create synergy, as well as provide enhanced security monitoring through the new Cyber Vision IoT security platform. Cisco's also announced several new initiatives aimed at providing sustainability in the enterprise IT space. Leveraging platforms such as Webex to reduce the carbon footprint of in person meetings is just the start. Partner companies like Pure Storage are working to reduce power consumption in devices as well, providing upgrade paths to reduce the amount of e-waste for end-of-life hardware. The goal is helping IT departments adopt sustainable methods and to integrate those into their workflows for future while also streamlining operations and reducing CapEx and OpEx budgets. So, Stephen, what are you hearing from Tom across the pond? Is he well rested? Does he know what day, month, or year it is? What's happening over at Cisco Live?
Well, lots happening over there. So we've got a great group of delegates over there. We've got the field day team doing field day at Cisco Live EMEA. And honestly, there's a lot of announcements and a lot of discussions going on. I think that the important aspect here, though, is to sort of step back and look at this strategically. So Cisco has always been known. I think if you ask people like, oh, what does Cisco make? You're going to say routers, you're going to say switches, you're going to think enterprise, that kind of thing. Well, that market is solid. They're still buying stuff. Cisco has competitors. But of course, there's the whole world of everything else, right? There's everything outside the data center. Like I said, we're talking about edge for Edge Field Day here. We're looking at 5G deployments. We're looking at industrial IoT. We're looking at all sorts of stuff. And Cisco is attacking that market as well. So one of the things I want to start with is Meraki. So Cisco bought Meraki. They were a Tech Field Day presenting company, independent of their own. Cisco bought them and brought them into the crew as a really, really clever cloud managed networking solution provider. And full disclosure, we actually bought the Meraki solution and used it here in the Gestalt IT HQ because it was just a really nice, useful business class, but not like Cisco enterprise class solution. Meraki introduced a really cool new edge router at the Tech Field Day presentation, and they were talking about the amazing things that it can do. Basically, you just power it up. It's got 5G in it. It gives you Wi-Fi. It can also act sort of as CBRS, kind of going the other way. And the thing is like super ruggedized and super plug and play, super hands off, which is all you need in industrial IoT and edge settings because you can't like send a tech out there. So check out the Tech Field Day presentation of that thing. Another thing that I'm personally kind of excited about is the new Catalyst 9200 line. The reason I am is because we were at the introduction of a previous generation of this thing. And basically, this is a PoE fanless switch for sort of edge, remote office, semi-industrial applications. This thing is the next generation. It's got a lot of power. It's got M-Gig. It really is a very, very cool, solid industrial IoT type device. But Tim, I know that you were looking at some of these other rugged switches that they're coming out and APs. What do you think of the Catalyst IE3100 and so on?
So this is a really interesting industry option for me. Is Cisco has been investing in the industrial space for quite some time now, and I, I'm an enterprise networking person, and I just haven't seen the different use cases that are out there. I'm trying to understand: are they really targeting these warehouse environments, or how much of this investment? You mentioned edge earlier, Stephen, where we're trying to get data and services as close to the user as possible in these potentially service provider points of presence locations that might not be as conducive as our modern day data centers are. So I'm wondering how much edge is bringing up the need for some of these industrial switches like the 3100, and we just want to have these ruggedized devices that we can put in these locations and not have to worry about having good operating environments and that kind of thing. Is that your thought, that that's where a big play for these industrial switches are going, or is there something else I'm just completely missing?
Yeah, I think Cisco's basically looking for more mushrooms to plant their devices underneath. You know what I mean? They can't just be in the closet. They can't just be in the data center. They've got to be everywhere. And these things are everywhere. I mean, if you look at the lineup here with these catalyst switches, these ruggedized fanless switches. So I talked about the 9200. The 3100, it looks like it belongs on a tank or something. I mean, and these access points. I mean, that's what Cisco's trying to do here. They're trying to basically sell into everywhere, and I mean everywhere. Retail, restaurants, industrial, mines, ships at sea. I don't know, everything. That's smart because that's where data is increasingly. That's what we're seeing with Edge Field Day. There's a sort of an interesting aspect of Edge where some applications would not be possible with centralized IT. Things like machine learning processing of camera data. We talked about that on the Utilizing AI podcast last season, where there are now applications out there that have basically, they just point cameras at stuff, smokestacks, boilers, machines, and so on, and use machine learning to watch and tell me if that thing breaks, okay? You can't send that kind of video data back to the core. It's just not physically possible. And so you can't have this application unless you have IT at the edge, which means that you need edge compute, you need scalable management of that stuff, and you need connectivity. And that's really what this stuff is all about. Cisco is also leaning really heavily into PoE with these things, high-powered PoE, because the last thing you want to do is have a little wall wart sitting there, that you plug into the wall in a factory, and somebody comes by and, I need to plug something in here, and they unplug it and plug something else in. Yeah, that's just not going to do. So having everything running over a single Ethernet cable, data and power, is very, very smart. And I definitely do see these things as a huge growth opportunity for a big company like Cisco. Again, the challenge is that for every Cisco device, there's 50 smaller companies that are trying to compete in this space as well. But of course, that has a sort of a flip side of it, in that Cisco has sales reps and relationships with a lot of these big companies, and it's likely that Cisco will be able to put together sort of package deals that make them competitive with these small companies. Do you buy that, Tim?
I do think that integrating their devices more and more into organizations is where the industry is going, whether that's natural or where Cisco's pushing that direction. You brought up PoE a minute ago, and I really want to touch on that because we've been treating in recent years, the network is just becoming another utility to companies. It's got to be like water. It's got to be like electricity. It just has to be there. And really, with these PoE offerings and setting it up to where manufacturers can make more devices that rely on PoE is really just pushing that initiative that the network infrastructure is becoming a definite needed utility to run organizations. And I think this line of ruggedized industrial gear is just taking that a step forward. You're going to have, I think, warehouses and in other industrial areas like that rely on their devices, plug into switches, and like you said, they get their data communications and their power from those switches, and that's just going to be mainstream even more than it already is.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit, I guess, on the fence about the smart buildings initiative and PoE-based lighting and things like that. I got to say, Cisco's been showing this stuff off, especially at Cisco Live and especially in Europe for a long time. And smart buildings sound great, but as somebody who's worked in this field, we've tried to do a lot of automation here in the office and so on. It's a little challenging. There's some pitfalls. I like the fact that they're going in that direction, but I'm not 100% convinced. One of the aspects of smart building, though, that I am convinced about is the sustainability aspect. And I think that this is another thing that we're really seeing a lot of at Cisco Live EMEA this year. And that is talking about carbon, talking about power consumption, talking about efficiency, and overall environmental sustainability. For example, Cisco's Webex now has a carbon emission insights dashboard that a company can use to kind of estimate the energy usage and CO2 emissions from their collaboration devices, basically to look at the power that's being sucked in by all these devices everywhere. I don't know if that's going to work out. I don't know if it's going to make a big difference, but it's the right idea. And we're hearing similar things from Cisco as well and some of their partners. So, for example, one of the partners, Pure Storage, that is there at Cisco Live, is talking about how they're working with Cisco to reduce the energy footprint of the data center infrastructure. And they're actually going to be talking to Tom Hollingsworth about that. There's going to be an interview posted on Gestalt IT about that. And it's really interesting because Pure has a wonderful technology, this evergreen technology, where basically they replace the outdated components, but they leave the rest of the components running. And they can do this over time. And to the extent that some Pure devices in the field actually have like the original, I don't know, power cord and like mounting brackets or something left over from like the first one 10 years ago. And everything else has been replaced, but the thing has never been down. It's just like we replace this, we replace that. Now that's sustainable. And as we talked about as well, when we look at flash-based storage instead of disk-based storage, uses a lot less power, takes up a lot less space, which means less cooling, which means less overall energy impact from that. And again, I really applaud the storage industry for sort of leaning into this whole aspect of sustainability and reducing power consumption, because storage has always been this big monster in the data center. And hopefully what we're going to see from companies like Pure and Cisco is maybe a little monster in the data center.
These are really mind-blowing initiatives to me. You talked about Webex and how it's integrating with the smart building aspects to be able to take those air quality measurements and not only just report that, hey, we may have an issue here, but they can actively tie into like the HVAC systems to start pumping in fresh air into these rooms where maybe there's more people than there's supposed to be. I mean, I said that's mind blowing. I have a hard enough time finding a room to book some days, let alone some of these sustainability efforts. And I think when people hear, at least when I hear sustainability, I think more on the policy side, and these are the things that we have to do to make our businesses, our planet more sustainable, but maybe don't always get into what it is we're doing in the practical applications of this. And what Cisco's done, the investments it's put into smart building efforts and Webex to help some of these sustainability efforts is interesting to me. And you mentioned lighting. And when I first heard that, all the different smart components, I'm like, well, hang on. Those rely on PoE. We like to do maintenance to our network systems. We like to do code upgrades. We like to do reloads, that kind of thing. I don't want the lights to turn off every time I do that. And they've really invested a lot into fast software upgrades to where when you take a switch down for an upgrade, all the devices, including the lights, including the APs, won't lose power. They'll just lose their connectivity. And when the switch comes back and the data connectivity is restored, they'll be able to communicate again, but they won't lose their PoE. And I think to add into these sustainability efforts, you have to have that. You can't turn the lights off to do maintenance.
Yeah, and it makes it, I think, more important to have an integrated solution. And again, that's what I like about what Cisco's doing here is that they're trying to build basically a sort of a ubiquitous network everywhere. And I think it's good stuff overall. As I said, we've got some of this stuff in our own office. We have one of these Cisco PoE switches powering some of our stuff, and it works, and it's pretty reliable. In fact, it's been more reliable than the freaking LED light bulb. So so it's not so bad. It's not so bad. So